this is really sort of a response video to something. Let's see, his name Rowan J. Coleman. Video did a few days back. Does canon really matter? Star Trek video essay, and I buy a lot of it. For the arguments for the most part, but I think he still gives a little bit of short shrift to the importance of canon. Canon's important to any show that wants to be taken the least bit seriously. And also, it's also an indicator of how well the writers and the producers regard their audience. Because, if they appreciate the fact they're paying attention, they care about what you're writing, and they care that things line up. That you can't just, throw whatever the hell on the screen and just expect them to buy it. You got to be. It's just basically just staying consistent with your story. It's like I'm gonna bring up an example of Cheers later on here, but it's like some shows. It's very simple to keep the canon. It's a bar located in Boston. The owner is Sam Malone, a former baseball player, and he's got these friends. You got Cliff, the mailman. Norm, God knows what he does. Frasier, there's like yada yada yada. You just stay consistent with that. Everyone acts the way they usually act for the most part. You have throw situations to show what happens, but you got to maintain consistency, or either you make it, or that's the difference between a good show and a bad show. Either they maintain consistency, or they make a point of being very consistent as part of the joke, like South Park, or Family Guy, or The Simpsons, where canon is almost a nerdy, a dirty word, and they make a joke of it. But again, they're still showing why it's actually important by showing how what kind of craziness you get when you're not. But as in the case of Star Trek, it gets to the argument with the Klingons and talking about how between the end of the series and the movies, there's like this much. Okay. Again, just to get a little bit into the nerdy weeds here. The motion picture took place after the series. You're adding to it. This is a continuation of it. Discovery takes place between the cage and where no man has gone before. In other words, it takes place during the original series, which is a whole nother can of worms they've leaped into here. And there's very little stylistic change between the cage and where no man's gone before. There's some noticeable ones, but nothing that would account for anything resembling Discovery in either appearance or technology or anything like that. So, and as Doug Drexler's pointed out repeatedly when this thing comes up, Star Trek at this point is a period piece. You're not just playing with science; you're playing with a defined history and culture and yada and technological levels from period to period. And if you're going to pick in a period, you better be consistent with that period. The only safe place you can go in that is past it, which is actually what the one smart thing that I was going to say Lower Decks has done. Picard kind of went there, but they also tied there's ties back to Discovery. So it's like they're just as guilty. In fact, probably more so because they've taken established characters that we know and totally ruined them. But if you're something that was a bit of a warning that Ron Moore gave to Brandon Bragg and Rick Berman, if you're going to do a prequel to TOS, you better become true believers in TOS. And they had problems when they differed, but they were close enough to canon, and what they violated really was fans' preconceptions of what that era was like. And no, it wasn't really like that. And the way they're trying to bring modern sensibilities in and trying to build bridge, they really did try to build a bridge to the original series. And they really, when Manny Coder took over, he had a better idea of what was going on. They were doing that with fourth season. Fifth season would have been even more. They would have seen the refit with an addition of a secondary hull on the NX-01, moving on from there. But getting back to this here, it's like to get a show with a real good, consistent, let's take Cheers. Let's just get more than one show. And the Frasier, it's really the Cheers universe now. So there was, and some episode of Cheers, Fraser Crane sitting in the bar, mentioning his late father. I don't know what those words. We mentioned him in the past tense, so that, yeah, he was dead. And he was a psychologist, which inspired him to become a psychologist. Throwaway reference. During my bar. Move on. Nobody remembers. At least you think nobody remembers. But the thing is, years later, you got Fraser. His dad's very much alive, and he's a retired police officer. So, and I think they were probably getting letters from longtime fans. Hey, how about him backing this up? He said he was dead and everything. Okay, so Sam Malone shows up on Frasier, where he meets Frasier's father. I thought you said he was dead. You said I was dead while we were fighting at the time. It was easier to just deal with that way, you know. You also said he was a psychologist. You told me you said he was a psychologist. Well, you were dead. What difference does it matter, you know? That's the difference between writers who actually respect their audience for paying attention, and basically rewards them with it with a cleverly, written, resolution to it. And that is also really what we got with Enterprise when they finally answered the question of what happened to the Klingons. They didn't just shuffle on the rug and say it was a makeup difference. And, yeah, he mentions, DS9 in this video, how they were just shuffling. They were shuffling under the rug because they dug. One comment, but they just put Worf in TOS makeup and, make it through. That would have made a bit of a joke of it, and it would have been cute, but it also would have undermined it. So, because you can't just have Worf show up like an original series Klingon and nobody say anything about it. Okay? Star Trek isn't that kind of show. But again, there was the elephant in the room. You got original series Klingons and Worf. You got to say something. And that was the way we just could have put it off. Okay, we're not going to deal with that right now, okay? We acknowledge there's a difference. We established very tight ties that this is part of the same universe. When you had Scotty show up, use the holodeck to show up on the Enterprise bridge. But Scotty there in the first place, okay? You can't just shuffle this stuff off because you know by now you have audience that pays very close attention. They have from the very beginning. When the original series was on NBC, they would get letters asking, why did the transporter flash 3 times in this episode, twice in that episode, and then 4 times in another one? People were paying attention. They had a very intelligent and very attentive audience. So as part of the thing, we better keep this straight or we're going to get barbecued. Now along comes, and yes, there were mistakes made. But when they have a good, solid canon, you can account for those mistakes here. You can come up with ways to work around it for the most part. Very little stuff has to be, just completely written off. My personal favorite is with Star Trek V. Well, the bulk of that is actually just a drunken ghost story told by Kirk and McCoy around the campfire. Spock wanted to do more rituals of camping out. And a few too many helpings of the secret ingredient in the beans. And you notice the story gets more and more bizarre as it goes on. That sort of thing. In a way, you can see it as kind of a reference to Gene Roddenberry's approach to screenwriting. Brilliant starting off, but then as you go further down the whiskey bottle, the story gets more and more weird. Take the Omega Glory, for instance. Start off, what happened to the Exeter? Oh my God, then the crystal. What? The Constitution? What the hell's going on? There's also a snippet about a lost colony ship, which only makes things worse. But along comes Kurtzman. The fact that there were errors here and there, he takes it as leave of, why care? Just throw it all out there and just do whatever you want. Don't even try to be consistent. Plus also that 25% difference thing, so that he can license his crap, and CBS won't have to get as much money. Of course, it doesn't matter much if nobody buys it, Alex. You're getting nothing. So, yeah, good move there, smartass. Now, and again, that really all starts. It's not just the canon. It is the horrible writing and the characters and the casual disregard of canon. It really just focuses the whole thing of this. It's like they don't care. That's a big thing. If you care, you can even Dayton Ward, famous, he hates canon arguments, but he stays consistent for the most part. He doesn't violate canon at a moment's notice because he's a good writer. He wants to be consistent. He wants to get paid. He wants his books to sell. You know? So you can't suddenly start writing Kirk as some flaming, drag queen flouncing down the thing and say it's the same damn character that Bill Shatner gave us in the 60s. Or, or the thing about, Spock suddenly sprouting siblings everywhere, when they pretty well established, through inference or whatever, that Spock was an only child, okay? And again, this is where the Drunken Ghost story takes care of Sybok. And thus, they had a perfect opportunity in Discovery to reference Sybok. And no, there's no Sybok there either. So, long and short of it is, any show, their canon is very important. If they expect to retain an audience and be taken seriously, even if it's a comedy, if they expect their show to be taken at least bit seriously, they got to maintain a certain canon. Some shows it's easy. It's a bar in Boston run by an ex-baseball player. You got 7 castaways on an island, and yada yada yada. With a show like Star Trek, you got more to take track of, but also there's a lot more there. It's where to sit down. Reference work galore. It's not that hard to stay consistent, Kurtzman. Mistakes were honest mistakes. No, you were just blatantly flouting those, things. And it's, the whole thing about Spock being highly emotional all the time is not really. It's that one scene in the cage, and I still maintain that if they hadn't been throwing that thing together at the last minute because of a scheduling problem, mainly that they didn't have any episodes ready to go, and they were, Justman was about to send a letter to the network saying we weren't going to make our air date, and he was probably bodily threatened by both Herb Solo and Gene Roddenberry. Don't you dare send that letter. That'll make us dead in the water at NBC. Because, the cage, the menagerie, there was enough there they could have done a 90-minute episode with just the cage. But, the idea at the time they made the thing was, if we can't sell it at NBC, we can do a few add-on scenes and sell it as a movie overseas. It is something similar to the last couple episodes of Lieutenant. So, and other shows did it too. Man from U.N.C.L.E. does, a lot of shows, would put together episodes and throw them as movies overseas. But normally a Star Trek episode takes, this is wandering a bit, but just bear with me. Normally a Star Trek episode at the time took about at least 6 days to film. Sometimes 7, and sometimes you'd be doing pickup shots for the last episode during the next one. So there's a lot of overlap. So it's like production dates are kind of useless for the most part in trying to plot out a timeline. The menagerie they threw together in 4 days and bought themselves a week extra because basically that is, I think, television's first and only 2-part clip show. Help for the fact that it was clips that nobody had seen before. So I'd say Roddenberry was an okay writer, but as a producer, I think that's where his main talents lie, was in producing. Because he could solve production problems that others were like, what are we going to do? Well, take the plant, flip it up there, alien plant. On the next problem. And they've been badgering for months. We're going to find some use for this very expensive pilot you made us shoot. And the poser is like, nobody's the same as Spock. So imagine there's a room there. Well, let's see, maybe the uniforms in again, and go off from there. I think if they hadn't been throwing that together in probably a blind panic, they would have snipped out the bit where Spock cracks the smile with a plant. Okay, just snip that whole plant thing out entirely, and then Spock would have appeared relatively consistent throughout. He was a little more, little shouty, but he was shouty in the first few episodes too, so nothing wrong there. It was a phase he was going through. But basically, because of a production error, we get emo Spock with his all-knowing, all-seeing Ironheart little sister, or big sister really, because he was older than him, Telling Spock how to be Spock. Go seek out someone exactly opposite the... Okay. It's just... That was the really galling thing about just, everything revolves around Mikey Spock. Oh, Michael, you're the best officer. Well, telling her how she's the best officer I've ever seen, and while demonstrating that she doesn't belong anywhere near a starship. I wouldn't trust her to pilot a shuttlecraft at this point. I wouldn't trust her to work a lemonade stand on Rigel 4. Okay? Because also, along with canon violation, you also have credibility violations. Okay? It's like, never mind the fact that they didn't, check this box, that box, is this the least bit credible as a Star Trek situation? I mean, yeah, you could throw out some kind of little boomerang explanation for, the Klingons we saw in Discovery as an attempt to try and undo the Hogman virus. It's backfired badly. And well, that doesn't explain the fact that, if you showed other regular Klingons like that, some with the regular ridges, some looking like, original series Klingons, you'd have an out. But no, when they had that chance, you see all these mutated Klingorks. There was no attempt at it. I think the idea is, either they would have owed money directly to Viacom CBS for use of these other Klingons, or at best, they wouldn't be able to merchandise them and get any money out of it, because it all would have gone to Viacom CBS. So it's like, there's all kinds of weird things going on here. None of it good. But basically, yeah, it's just... If you don't care about the canon of the show, if you think you can't work within it, then find another show. And good luck with that, because every show has got basically its own canon. Even if it's as loose as hell like The Simpsons, you still got to maintain, this is what Bart does, and this is what Lisa's like. Or in Family Guy, that Peter's going to do this kind of crap, okay? At one point, Lois is going to go, what the hell? And so on and so forth. So even shows that Flot canon are going to have their own canon, And if you can't handle that, I suggest you try another line of work. And on that note, I think, PayPal, Patreon down below, and we'll talk at you later.